Have you ever seen those structures that they found under the ocean outside of Japan? And they've tried to say that these things are naturally occurring. There's portals, there's all this stuff down there.
A mysterious flash over the Indian Ocean that's never been solved. Dozens of ghost ships drifting into Japanese waters full of decaying corpses. One of the most haunted islands in the world, and more. These are dark and disturbing ocean mysteries that are impossible to solve. One of the creepiest unsolved mysteries of the ocean is the Vela incident. It was September 22nd of 1979 when a strange, bright flash of light lit up the skies near the Indian Ocean. The flash was detected by an American satellite which was monitoring for nuclear tests. Now, this flash appeared to be from a nuclear explosion, but it didn't come from any country that was openly conducting tests at the time. The location of the flash was near the southern coast of Africa, and it seemed to match the exact area where an unknown ship might have been conducting a secret nuclear test, but no one knew who would have been behind it. Some theories go that it could have been Israel testing a nuclear weapon in secret, or even a rogue South African operation, but no one's ever come out and said anything. Here's the extra eerie part though. Despite what seemed to be a nuclear test, there was no fallout, no debris. It's a very strange case, and most of the details about it seem to be pretty hush-hush. So was it a secret nuclear test, an accident, or something else entirely? The Palmyra Atoll is said to be one of the most eerie remote places on Earth. This tiny island, just 1.5 miles long, was discovered in 1798 by Captain Edward Fanning, who supposedly had a strange feeling about it before even seeing it. Fanning, sailing through the Pacific, was jolted awake 3 times during the night by an intense sense of danger. The final time, he found himself inexplicably dressed and rushing to the deck. His gut feeling led him to stop the ship for the night, and in the morning they saw what he had sensed: deadly reefs lying just ahead. If he'd ignored his instincts, the ship and its crew would have been lost. Since then, Palmyra's become rather infamous for bizarre and tragic events. One of the most disturbing incidents happened in 1974 when a couple, Mac and Muff Graham, arrived on the island for a visit. They were joined by another couple, Buck Walker and his girlfriend Stephanie Stearns, but things quickly turned dark. Walker, a fugitive with a violent past, killed the Grahams for their boat and supplies. According to Stearns, Walker killed them and their bodies were hidden in a metal container. Muff Graham's remains were discovered 6 years later by a couple visiting the island, washed up on the shore. It was found that Muff had been dismembered before being burnt and dumped. Mac's remains, however, were never found. But that's not the only dark thing to have taken place here. Hal Horton, a Navy officer stationed on Palmyra during World War II, spoke openly about the strange and tragic incidents that seemed to plague this island, including aircraft vanishing. Horton was quoted telling of how at least 2 planes were lost in broad daylight, their pilots mysteriously vanishing. He also mentioned the frequent equipment malfunctions that pilots experienced while landing or taking off from the island. According to Horton, these issues were so frequent that sailors and officers stationed there started calling it the Palmyra Curse. Horton described the island as incredibly small, so much so that a plane flying just 10,000 feet above it on a cloudy day might not even spot it. Once we heard a plane overhead, but he crashed in the drink before he could find the runway, Horton said. Tragically, the pilot didn't survive. We didn't get to the poor guy fast enough. Sharks found him first, he added. It didn't seem like it was just all bad luck. There was apparently this sense that something was just off about the place. In 2015, Japan's Coast Guard came across at least 12 wooden boats carrying the decaying bodies of 22 people. Some were nearly skeletons, 2 were even missing heads. The first boat appeared in October, and then more turned up in November. The Japan Coast Guard was left trying to piece together the mystery as to where these boats came from and what had happened to the people on board. The boats looked like they'd come from North Korea. One clue was found on a boat that carried 10 decomposing bodies. The hull had Korean lettering that read North Korea's military. Another clue was a tattered piece of cloth which looked like it could be from a North Korean flag. Some believe these boats were just just lost fishing vessels. Others think they might have been used by defectors trying to escape North Korea. The thing is, this isn't an isolated incident. North Korean ghost ships wash up in Japan all the time. Every year, derelict boats from North Korea wash up on Japan's shores, some with no crew, others carrying the remains of those lost at sea. Most of these ghost ships seem to be North Korean fishermen who get stranded out at sea, but that doesn't explain every case. In March of 1918, the USS Cyclops, a massive Navy ship nearly 550 feet long, vanished without a trace, leading to one of the biggest mysteries in naval history. The ship, carrying a crew of 306 and tons of manganese ore, was on its way from Brazil to Baltimore. The last message sent was simply, "Weather fair, all well," but the ship was never heard from again. Not even an SOS was received. She just disappeared as though some gigantic monster of the sea had grabbed her, men and all, and sent her into the depths. That's what was written in Santa Fe magazine a couple years after the disappearance. Now, as for what happened, some think maybe a German submarine sank the ship, but no evidence ever turned up to support that. Marvin Barish, whose ancestor was one of the Cyclops' crew, has spent years researching this mystery. He believes mechanical failures combined with the ship's heavy cargo may have caused it to capsize, especially near the Puerto Rico Trench, the deepest part of the Atlantic. He's still hoping that modern technology might one day uncover the wreckage, saying, "I just want her to be found. I want the 309 to be at rest, as well as the families."
Starting off our list today, we have the absolutely crazy amount of shipwrecks that have occurred in the Gulf of Mexico. In 2018, a report released by Ocean Explorer revealed that oil and gas companies had discovered an outstanding 600 shipwrecks and possible shipwrecks in the Gulf of Mexico while surveying the area at depths of up to 2,316 meters or 9,800 feet. 33 of these ships have been visually confirmed by either divers or remotely operated vehicles as historic vessels. And although only 600 shipwrecks and possible shipwrecks have been discovered by these companies to date, it is estimated that over 4,000 shipwrecks reside on the ocean floor of the Gulf of Mexico, sitting anywhere from the nearshore shallows all the way out to the deepest abyss of the Gulf. But that's not even the weirdest part. While attempting to explore a particular shipwreck, teams experienced submarine malfunctions, failed video monitors, sonar breaking, haywire hydraulics, and self-destructing rovers, which of course begs the question, are some of these shipwrecks possibly cursed, or maybe they contain levels of radiation that affect these machines, or is there some kind of electromagnetic phenomenon going on in these waters that we just haven't discovered yet? Next up, we have the fact that the bottom of the Pacific Ocean is leaking, which sounds terrifying, probably because it is. In April of last year, 2023, scientists discovered that a leak at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean is not spewing water, as they once assumed back in 2015, but rather it is leaking tectonic lubricant with temperatures ranging between 300 and 500 degrees Fahrenheit. The leak sits directly on top of the 600-mile-long Cascadia Subduction Zone fault, which sits approximately 15 to 20 kilometers or 50 to 65,000 feet below sea level. So why is this absolutely terrifying? Well, scientists believe that this leak could cause one of the strongest earthquakes the US and the world has ever seen, with a magnitude of 9.0, which is just 0.5 less than the largest magnitude earthquake to occur in recorded history. I don't know about you guys, but to me that sounds like a pretty good reason to get the heck out of the ocean. Next up on our list today, we have the mysterious light wheels seen in the Indian Ocean, the South China Sea, and the Persian Gulf. Also known as the Wheels of Poseidon, light wheels are a strange phenomenon in which massive blooms of light illuminate the ocean around a vessel in a circular formation that mimic the spokes of a wheel. While the light itself is pretty easily explainable, bioluminescence, living organisms that emit light through chemical reactions when the water around them becomes agitated. The shape formed by the bioluminescence is incredibly perplexing. Because of this, these wheels have become known as the crop circles of the ocean, and many theories, including underwater electromagnetic activities and even alien influence, have arisen as a result. Next up, I want to take a moment to talk about all of the wonderful, beautiful, incredibly deadly animals that are lucky enough to call the ocean home. Animals like the Portuguese man-o-war, the blue-ringed octopus, the cone snail, the Australian box jellyfish, and the stonefish, along with so many others. If you want to die a slow and painful death, these creatures are the companions for you. The Portuguese man-o-war is highly toxic and it floats on the surface of the water, making it incredibly easy to come into contact with. Just brushing up against the tentacles of this thing causes intense burning sensations, pain, paresthesia, and even death. The cone snail, while tiny, is also incredibly deadly, loaded with toxins that cause damage to nerve receptors, leading to extreme pain, muscle paralysis, blurred vision, respiratory paralysis, and of course, death. Blue-ringed octopus, small, poisonous, deadly. Its toxins make your muscles unable to contract, leaving your heart unable to pump blood. The Australian box jellyfish can kill you in 5 minutes, and of course the stonefish, which impales you with its sharp dorsal fins before releasing an incredibly powerful toxin into your bloodstream that causes skeletal and muscle paralysis, seizures, convulsion, respiratory arrest, damage to the cardiovascular system, and of course, drumroll please, death exists in the ocean as well. So can't blame them. That's some pretty scary stuff. Next up, we have the fact that the ocean contains deadly underwater lakes, aka brine pools. At the bottom of the Red Sea, at a depth of around 1,770 meters, scientists discovered something strange. A brine pool, which is made up of highly concentrated seawater, roughly 3 to 8 times saltier than the surrounding ocean. It looks like a pond sitting at the bottom of the sea floor. Super cool to look at, also super deadly to enter. You see, brine pools, believe it or not, contain a lethal amount of saline, salt, which replaces the oxygen content in the water. Brine pools also contain poisonous chemicals, including hydrogen sulfide. While there are some microbes that can survive brine pools, fish, crabs, eels, and humans cannot.
Here's something you gotta think about when exploring the deep sea: earthquakes and tsunamis. Getting caught up in a natural disaster while deep underwater is incredibly dangerous. Astronauts have a lot to worry about, but earthquakes aren't one of them. You don't gotta worry about the Earth's crust shifting when you're not on Earth. Seismic activity beneath the ocean doesn't just trigger destruction on land, it also triggers massive waves, which can of course cause serious problems out at sea. First, you've got underwater earthquakes, giant shudders that happen deep beneath the ocean's surface when tectonic plates shift and grind against each other. We're talking about seismic waves that can shake the ocean floor like a rag doll. So, if you're diving or exploring the deep sea when one of these earthquakes hits, not good. You'd be tossed around with no control over where you're going or what's gonna happen next. And these underwater earthquakes can trigger tsunamis, massive walls of water traveling at high speed, swallowing up everything in their path. Ships, submarines, entire cities along coastlines. Tsunamis are a nightmare scenario for researchers out at sea. Imagine a tsunami barreling towards you from miles away, and by the time you realize what's happening, it's too late. You're caught in this storm of swirling water and debris with no way out, and even if you manage to escape the immediate danger, the aftermath of an underwater earthquake can be just as deadly. The seabed can shift and change in an instant, creating underwater landslides and whirlpools. Now let's talk more about landslides though. These can also be brought on by methane hydrate deposits. Methane hydrate deposits are basically chunks of ice that trap methane gas inside of them. These deposits are stable under high pressure and low temperatures, but when these conditions change, like if the ocean, say, is warming up or if the pressure drops, the methane hydrates can break down and release the methane gas. There are tons of these deposits sitting under the seabed, just waiting to be disturbed, and if that happens, the methane gas shoots up to the surface like a rocket, creating massive bubbles that can swallow up ships and cause explosions. And as I mentioned, there's the landslide part. Methane hydrate deposits can help stabilize the seafloor, so when they break down, it can lead to underwater landslides. These landslides can be massive, a bit like underwater avalanches. Another one of the many dangers of the sea, rogue waves, aka freak waves, killer waves, or monster waves, and they live up to their name. These are massive waves that can appear without warning, so pretty big threats to ships. You could be cruising along and enjoying the salty breeze when out of nowhere a massive wall of water, taller than a 10-story building, comes crashing down on you. They can appear seemingly out of nowhere in the middle of calm seas, and I wasn't exaggerating before. They can be huge. We're talking over 100 feet tall sometimes, which is insane. That's like a skyscraper just suddenly rising up from the ocean. What makes them so scary though is that unpredictability. They don't follow the usual patterns of waves, so sailors can't really prepare for them, at least not entirely. In one moment, you could be sailing smooth, and the next, you're facing towering walls of water that could easily capsize even large ships. And scientists still don't fully understand what causes rogue waves. One of the most dangerous sections of Earth's waters is the Sargasso Sea. The Sargasso Sea is like this floating jungle in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, but instead of trees, it's made of a unique type of seaweed called sargassum. This seaweed forms thick mats that can stretch for miles, and it creates this tangled maze. It's a bit eerie. It's kind of like a big floating desert. There's not much else around it except for the seaweed, and that sounds kind of peaceful, but for sailors, it's a different story. Navigating through all that sargassum is actually proven to be pretty dangerous. The Sargasso Sea has a very dark reputation. It's kind of known for swallowing up ships, and over the centuries there have been all these tales of sailors getting trapped in the area, the ships unable to move as they're slowly engulfed by the seaweed. Sounds awful.
Starting us off today, we have, of course, aliens. Now before you click away, let me explain. Our world was formed over the course of billions of years, during which time countless comets and asteroids continuously collided with our planet. Scientists at NASA believe that it is these comets that brought water to planet Earth and filled our oceans. Why do they think this? Well, because of chemical markers found in our oceans. The isotopic levels of our ocean water are incredibly similar to some of the oldest meteorites in the solar system, which would be virtually impossible unless it was ancient meteorites who delivered the water to our planet in the first place. Here's the thing though, when the asteroids crashed on Earth and subsequently created our oceans, the water inside would have been accompanied by organic materials. You see where I'm going with this. Organic materials that have been evolving for the past 3.8 billion years. While it is quite possible that humans are a result of this biological material, it's also possible that we're not the only result. And considering only 5% of our oceans have been explored, I'd say it's pretty possible and maybe even probable that some kind of other unfathomable creature lurks below the depths of the deep seas. Not only that, but each time a new asteroid hits our oceans, I feel like it brings forward a whole new possibility of evolutionary life.
What's the scariest, most mind-boggling thing in space? Well, to my knowledge, it would have to be black holes. Now, luckily, all of them are way too far away to pose any real threat to us here on Earth, or even for astronauts out in space for that matter, but the deep sea has its own kind of version of black holes. Eddies, and they are not too far away to pose significant threats. Eddies are basically circular currents, sort of like a whirlpool, that form within the larger ocean currents. Eddies can be small or big, and when I say big, I mean some of them can actually be seen from space, which is pretty scary. Now, there's not as much mystery surrounding eddies as there is with actual black holes, of course. It's pretty obvious where you'd end up if you were dragged into one of these things, but arguably it would be scarier as well, because with a black hole, it's like, well, who knows really what's in there? Could be good. Probably not, but there's a possibility. With eddies, I mean, you just drown. Drowning is probably one of the worst ways to die. And that's the other horrifying thing about these massive sized ones. Nothing can escape, just like with a black hole. Anything caught up just gets sucked in. And if you're thinking you can just wait it out, maybe you can, but some of these whirlpools can last for hours, days, and in some cases, there have been ones that have been circulating for years.
So if we go back to the reason for water on Earth and take a moment to seriously consider the fact that the organic material brought to Earth by the same asteroids that brought us water have had 3.8 billion years to evolve, I'm gonna go ahead and say that it's pretty likely that it did. And it evolved into something NASA has kept us in the complete dark about. There have been rumors going around that during the 2022 Orpheus expedition, in which a NASA submersible traveled down into the uncharted depths of our oceans, they found something that they don't want us to know about. I mean, makes sense. It's not like this would be the first time that NASA has tried to keep something from the public. The submersible was deployed to explore the Hadal Zone, which is some 6,000 to 11,000 meters below sea level, and it includes the Mariana Trench. In fact, the Mariana Trench is just one of 30 subduction zones, or trench zones in simpler terms, that make up the Hadal. During NASA's 2022 mission, while exploring the depths under the guise of getting a better understanding of how to explore the moon's oceans, it is believed that they stumbled across something massive and never seen before. Underwater megafauna, massive animals, which was actually confirmed by an astronaut by the name of Garrett Reisman, who claims to have seen the eye of one of the creatures, and he described it as being as big as a flying saucer. Interesting analogy from a NASA astronaut.
Alright, expanding on Hannah's point a bit, some stories have been floating around about NASA coming across disturbing creatures deep in the ocean's depths. NASA is taken to exploring some of the deepest waters on Earth, the idea being that if they can learn more about the deep sea right here at home, they'll have a better understanding of what could be in deep sea environments on other planets. They also get a chance to test equipment in a similar environment to space. Now, NASA hasn't come out and said this on their own, but there have been some anonymous whistleblowers posting about experiences they've had on dives, with stories about running into dangerous creatures while on these deep sea explorations, intelligent creatures resembling humanoid cephalopods who seem to intentionally sabotage equipment. Now, are these stories real, or are they just some internet fun? Well, about 80% of the ocean is unexplored, and seeing as it takes up about 70% of the planet overall, hey, I could see there being something down there other than dumb fish.
Number 10. Lost submersible. A frantic search was underway for a submersible that disappeared while on a $250,000 per person dive, carrying 5 tourists to view the historic Titanic shipwreck. The 21-foot submarine named the Titan, which was operated with a video game controller, carried the CEO of the company in charge and 4 passengers when it lost contact off the coast of Cape Cod. Passengers only had a 96-hour supply of oxygen that had depleted to just 40 hours since the harrowing journey began. Now, as I am filming this, some pieces of the Titan have been found and all aboard are presumed dead. Now, there are many different outcomes that could have happened. The best case scenario is that it imploded from all the pressure, meaning the people on board died almost instantly, and the worst case scenario is they were alive for all 96 hours, knowing they were lost and running out of oxygen as the air became thick. Then they all died hyper aware of everything and died slowly. Now, it's unknown how or why the equipment failed or what even happened. They could have been caught on something, but without help, it seems like their fate was set from the beginning. Rescuers are still looking for more of the submersible, and if we do find it, we can hopefully discover why and how this happened. Now, all I'm saying is I really think they got the best immersive Titanic experience ever, so I don't think they should be mad about it. Number 9. Elongated skulls. Saqueum is a cenote located in Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula. It's a place that the locals feared, and in 2012, a team of divers discovered the reason behind its fearsome reputation. An underwater survey discovered 2 chambers of the cenote littered with human bones, including deformed skulls. Archaeologists spent 2 weeks exploring the 2 chambers, and the skulls belong to all different sexes and ages, so they aren't thought to be as sacrifices. Which then begs the question, what are they doing doing buried deep underwater. Archaeologist Bradley Russell, who made the discovery, believes the dead may have been buried as some form of ritual, or that they could be the victims of a plague that swept through the area. You wouldn't want them near the rest of the population, and you wouldn't want to drink the water either, Russell explained. Regardless, that's creepy, and why are the skulls even elongated? Are they another species of human? I just have so many questions. Number 8. The Baltic Sea Anomaly. In 2011, a sonar image was taken by Peter Lindenberg, Dennis Aberg, and their Swedish ocean diving team for searching for treasure on the ocean floor in the Baltic Sea. What the picture showed was a seemingly non-natural 200-foot circular object with passageways and stairs. The discovery looked like something out of a Star Wars film, and many people believed it was a spaceship that sank to the bottom of the ocean. Samples taken from the area in 2012 were given to Swedish scientists who said there was nothing extraterrestrial about the area, but I'm not too sure about that. What Ocean X and the crew found was weird, and many still think there is a UFO lying at the bottom of the Baltic Sea, and there's another expedition of the area planned soon, so maybe we'll see. Number 7. The Monster of Lake Iliamna. Lake Iliamna is a lake in southwest Alaska at the north end of the Alaska Peninsula. It shares a name with the Iliamna River, which flows into it. It's the largest in Alaska, third largest lake in the entirety of the United States. Now, local residents have a number of stories about the alleged Iliamna lake monster, an unknown aquatic creature. Speculation exists that reported sightings may be undocumented population of white sturgeon, which is a type of fish. If true, this would be the most northerly population known to exist, just a few hundred miles from the Arctic Circle. Jeremy Wade, presenter of Animal Planet's River Monsters, is among those who speculate these sightings of a monster is a white sturgeon. Others believe it's a Pacific sleeper shark, and evidence of this is corroborated by a 2012 YouTube video that shows a smaller Pacific sleeper shark in the lake, and there were several new sightings in 2017, and the Anchorage Daily News once offered a prize of $100,000 for concrete proof of its existence. Number 6. Unexplained sounds. Yes, there are several unexplained noises that have been recorded over the years, but two of the most popular being the bloop and Julia. Now, the name bloop sounds cute, but it's not. The bloop was actually an ultra-low frequency, high-amplitude underwater sound. Detected by the US National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, in 1997, the sound was loud, unprecedented, and eerie. Explanations offered included covert underwater military exercises, whales, giant squids, or a totally unknown sea creature. However, it seems glaciers were once again the culprit, with the sound judged to be consistent with ice calving, where large chunks of ice break off a glacier. But I'd like to believe it's something more sinister, even though that scares me a lot.
We've all heard about the lost city of Atlantis, but what about other islands that mysteriously vanish? One of the strangest cases in recent history is Sandy Island, which was charted back in 1774 by Captain James Cook. It appeared on maps for centuries, even being recorded on Google Maps as recently as 2012. But here's where it gets really weird. When Australian scientists went to find it that same year, 2012, they came up empty. They recorded ocean depths of over 4,300 feet or 1,310 meters where the island should have been, but no island, just deep water. So was Sandy Island ever really there? Some think it could have been a cartographer's error or a phantom island that only appeared on maps because of miscalculations or mistaken sightings, but with no answers and no island to show for it, Sandy Island is one of the strangest and eeriest mysteries of the Pacific. Koh Tao, or Turtle Island in the Gulf of Thailand, is known for its beautiful beaches, coral reefs, and resorts. It really does look like quite the getaway, but it's also sometimes referred to as Death Island. So how did it get that nickname? Well, it all started with a string of mysterious deaths. In 2012, a young man named Ben Harrington died after an apparent motorcycle accident on the island, but there was more to it. His wallet and watch were missing. His mother, of course, suspected foul play, especially after the coroner kind of hesitated to call it an accident. In 2014, two British backpackers, Hannah Withridge and David Miller, were found dead on the same beach where Ben had stayed 2 years earlier. Local police mishandled the crime scene and rushed to blame two migrant workers who were eventually convicted, but crucial evidence like DNA samples were never collected. As if that weren't disturbing enough, 2 weeks later another body turned up on that same beach, 24-year-old Luke Miller, found at the bottom of a swimming pool. Then a woman vanished from a Koh Tao hostel, and 6 weeks later the body of Belgian tourist Elise Del Magni was found. Her body had been wrapped in t-shirts. Then in January of 2015, Christina Marion Ansley's body was discovered in a bungalow, but authorities waited days to conduct a post-mortem. The UK's coroner rejected the Thai results, citing incompetence. With no answers or closure, rumors of a serial killer family on the island started to spread, but till this day, we still don't know for sure. In 2015, something strange happened off the coast of Alaska when 30 whales stranded themselves on the shores of Kodiak Archipelago. Almost all of them died, and nearly every one of the whales was a fin whale. Experts also realized that the whales likely all died around the same time. Now, at first, scientists thought toxic algae might have caused it, but they quickly ruled that out because no other species of marine animals showed similar signs of death. A few months earlier, though, a mass die-off of birds occurred along the same coastline, but they weren't sure if the birds and the whales died from the same cause. It's possible that there were more dead whales out there that either got eaten by scavengers or drifted out of reach. On January 29, 1921, the Carroll A. Deering, a schooner, was headed home to Virginia after a trip to Barbados. As it passed a light ship off the coast of North Carolina, the captain of the watch vessel noticed something odd. The crew of the Deering appeared to be wandering aimlessly on the deck, and when the lightship's overseer called out, a crew member yelled back saying they had lost their anchors. Just a few days later, another ship, the SS Lake Ellen, spotted the Carroll A. Deering again. The captain of the Lake Ellen wrote in his log that the crew seemed to be acting strangely and that the ship was drifting off on a, quote, peculiar course. Then, 2 days later, the US Coast Guard discovered the Deering had washed up on North Carolina's Outer Banks. The weather was too bad for a full inspection, but they did notice that the Deering was missing its lifeboats. When the Coast Guard returned after the weather had cleared, they found something even stranger on the ship. Nothing but a full meal that was cooked, prepared, and perfectly laid out, sitting completely untouched, as if the crew had vanished in the middle of eating. All their personal items were also gone. It was like no one had ever been on board at all. Until this day, the mystery has never been solved. The lost continent of Mu, also known as Lemuria, is one of the most mysterious ocean myths. According to some theories, Mu is a massive civilization that existed in the Pacific Ocean between 10,000 and 50,000 years ago, home to over 60 million people. These people were believed to belong to a highly advanced culture known as the Nakal. The idea of Mu was first introduced by Augustus Laplangian, a British-American writer, who argued that Egypt and Mesoamerica were created by survivors of this lost land. Later, James Churchward expanded on this theory, writing that Mu was located somewhere between Easter Island and the Marianas. Churchward claimed that the continent was destroyed by a series of catastrophic earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. But modern geologists have strongly rejected this idea, pointing out that it's impossible for a continent to disappear so quickly. But even still, the legend of Mu persists to this day. The Black Sea, often referred to as both the inhospitable sea and the hospitable sea, is said to be a very mysterious place. This stretch of water has seen more than its fair share of strange sightings and unexplained disappearances. In 2000, for example, an explorer named Robert Ballard made a pretty fascinating discovery, finding evidence that a massive flood may have wiped out ancient civilizations in the Black Sea. Throughout the Middle Ages, sailors reported seeing mysterious whirlpools that would suddenly appear, even on calm waters, pulling ships and entire islands into the depths. The whirlpools were so feared that fishermen avoided the area altogether, believing that it was cursed. And even more recently, in 1945, 5 Soviet bombers vanished over the Black Sea, never to be seen again. A similar incident occurred in 1990 when a Greek plane disappeared under mysterious circumstances. Then in 1991, a Russian oil rig was found abandoned in the sea with all 80 workers missing and their possessions and half-eaten meals left behind. And these are just a handful of the mysterious things that have happened in the Black Sea. In October of 1988, 2 friends, Michael Calvin and John Blissett, set out from Fremantle, Australia on a luxury schooner called the Patinella. During the trip, Calvin sent a letter to his twin sister telling her how great the weather was and how much fun he and Blissett were having. They were also excited about starting their own charter business once they returned home after Christmas. Before they left, Calvin and Blissett even decided to put a message in a bottle to send out to sea, offering a free holiday on board their boat for anyone who found the letter, but the men were never seen or heard from again. The ship vanished off the coast of Sydney, but nearly 20 years later, in 2007, a woman named Cheryl Weidman found an old bottle while beachcombing, and inside was a note that read, "Hi there, out here in the lonely Southern Ocean, and thought we would give away a free holiday." The note also had Blissett's phone number and the Patinella's position when it was sent out. Till this day, though, the wreckage of the ship has never been found. In February of 1968, the USS Scorpion, a nuclear-powered submarine, left Norfolk, Virginia, headed for the Mediterranean. With nearly a decade of reliable service, there was no reason to suspect anything wrong would happen, but just a few months later, something did. On May 27, 1968, families waited for the Scorpion to return, but it never did. By October, the Navy found the wreckage on the ocean floor and found that all 99 men aboard had died. But there were no clear answers as to what had happened. In 1985, famous explorer Robert Ballard, again who would later discover the Titanic wreck, visited the Scorpion site, but even he couldn't solve the mystery. Over the years, several theories have been put forward. Some think the Scorpion was attacked by the Soviets. Others think the sub accidentally fired one of its own torpedoes during a training exercise and it turned back and hit the Scorpion, but unfortunately, we may never know for sure. In February of 1748, just before Valentine's Day, the Lady Lovibond set sail off the coast of England, heading home to celebrate the captain's wedding. But things got sour during the journey when the captain discovered that his bride-to-be was actually in love with his best friend. So, the captain decided to take his own life, as well as everyone else on board, steering the ship straight into the Goodwin Sands. Everyone died in the disaster. And since that day, though, there have been sightings of a ship that looks eerily similar to the Lady Lovibond. Over the years, sailors have reported encounters with what seemed to be a ghost ship. Captains sailing near the Goodwin Sands have claimed to see a ship appear out of nowhere, only for it to vanish before they could reach it. Others have spotted what looked like a wrecked ship in the distance, only to find nothing when they get closer. The most famous story happened in the early 1900s, though, when locals in Kent saw a three-masted ship heading full speed toward the Goodwin Sands, and knowing it would crash, they rushed to help, but when they arrived, nothing was there. In 1906, the SS Valencia was caught in a violent storm off the coast of British Columbia, Canada. Rescue boats rushed to the scene and lifeboats were deployed, but only 37 people survived. Then in 1910, things took a strange turn. That year, people started claiming that they'd seen a phantom ship drifting in the area. Locals in British Columbia and fishermen out at sea were spotting lifeboats, and they were filled with skeletons. Many believe the ghostly lifeboats were somehow connected to the Valencia, and the creepy events didn't stop here either. In 1933, nearly 30 years after the Valencia sank, the ship's number 5 lifeboat was discovered completely intact in British Columbia's Barkley Sound. Despite being out in open ocean for decades, exposed to the harsh sea and salty water, the lifeboat showed no signs of wear or damage. When the rest of the wreckage of the Valencia was later found near a 100-foot-high bluff, no one could explain how that lifeboat survived so perfectly intact for so long. The mystery of the Valencia and its phantom lifeboats remains unsolved.
Number 5. The Yonaguni Monument. Are they man-made steps and ancient pyramids that sank in an earthquake, or natural rock formations? These strange structures in the water off the coast of Japan, nicknamed Japan's Atlantis, have baffled scientists since they were found. The sea off Yonaguni is a popular diving location during the winter months because of its large population of hammerhead sharks. In 1986, while looking for a good place to observe the sharks, the director of Yonggi Chao Tourism Association noticed some singular seabed formations resembling architectural structures. Amazingly, scientists are still arguing if people or Mother Nature created the Yonaguni Monument, as well as whether markings in the stone are carvings of faces and animals or simply naturally made scratches. Today, it's a popular dive spot with tourists today and continues to puzzle people as one of the ancient mysteries researchers still can't explain. Number 4. Giant underwater pyramids. Is an anomaly that experts have been been unable to fully understand or explain. Picked up by oceanic GPS technology, measurements of a structure were found, leading researchers to believe that two giant pyramids of ancient times sit underwater thousands of feet below the surface. The GPS data received back that the structures had a base of 8,000 square feet and were about 150 feet tall, making these pyramids pretty giant in size. But there's very little explanation into their existence, leaving it all entirely up to speculation. Why would they be there? Is it another hidden city? Who knows? The pyramid has been underwater for about 20,000 years. Considering this is around the time of the last ice age, where glaciation was melting from its peak 2,000 years prior, whatever civilization, human or not, that was around before the ice age could be responsible for building the pyramid. While the Portuguese Navy still hasn't determined the origins, many question why it hadn't been first reported sooner than late 2012. Now, to further support the idea the pyramid could have been built by different civilizations, archaeologists from the Portuguese Association of Archaeological Research have recently discovered evidence on Pico Island that suggests their belief that humans existed in the Azores region before the arrival of the Portuguese thousands of years ago. Number 3. The Mariana Trench. In the western Pacific Ocean, you will find the deepest part of the sea. The Mariana Trench is deeper than the height of Mount Everest, 43 miles wide, and a massive 1,580 miles long, which is 5 times larger than the Grand Canyon. Certified U.S. National Monument, only small areas of the Mariana Trench have been explored. James Cameron reached the bottom in the submersible vessel Deep Sea Challenger in 2012, with the last successful attempt to search the ocean floor coming in 2020, when Chinese submersible Fenduji made it all the way down. Several new species of underwater creatures have been discovered in the Mariana Trench, with most living on the surface of the ocean floor, including a type of sea cucumber. Explorers will find themselves in total darkness as they continue to understand what else lies in the deepest parts of the ocean and how the marine life manages to survive. Now, because of its sheer size and pressure, only 4 expeditions in total have successfully descended, so will we ever know what's really down there? I don't think so. Number 2. Orca attacks. For weeks, the world has been watching with interest as a group of orcas appear to be ambushing boats off the coasts of Spain and Portugal. Now, a boat captain is speaking out, saying that after his boat was attacked for a second time, he now thinks these groups of orcas know exactly what they're doing. Captain Dan Kritz, a sailor with Reliance Yacht Management, had his first orca encounter in 2020. I was sailing with my delivery crew delivering a yacht when I was surrounded with a pack of 8 orcas, pushing the boat around for about an hour. We were one of the first boats experiencing this very unusual orca behavior. He added, first time in 2020 we could hear them communicating under the boat. This time they were quiet, it didn't take them that long to destroy both rudders. Looks like they knew exactly what they were doing, they didn't touch anything else, he added, saying it only took them about 15 minutes to dismantle parts of the boat. Now, marine scientists are still trying to determine what is causing the uptick in orca attacks on boats off the coasts of Portugal and Spain, but there's no question there's been a sizable increase in incidents over the past 2 years. Killer whale research group Atlantic Orca Working Group has found that these events have tripled, with 52 incidents in 2020 compared to more than 200 in 2022. Earlier this month, biologist and wildlife conservationist Jeff Coren told CBS that the behavior boils down to the incredible intelligence of orcas, and he believes older whales are teaching their young pod members these destructive tendencies. And honestly, good for them. We are practically barging into their house, and I think that they should keep it up. And coming in at number 1 is the Bermuda Triangle. The Bermuda Triangle is an urban legend focused on loosely defined regions of the western part of the North Atlantic Ocean, where a number of aircrafts and ships are said to disappear under mysterious circumstances. Some speculate that unknown and mysterious forces account for the unexplained disappearances, such as extraterrestrials capturing humans for study, the influence of lost continent of the Atlantis, and vortexes that suck objects into other dimensions. For example, on December 5th, 1945, Flight 19 was lost with 14 airmen, and later that same day, PBM Mariner Bu number 59225 was lost with 13 airmen while searching for Flight 19. Or when in 1918 the USS Cyclops and the 309 people on it disappeared without a trace sometime after leaving Barbados. So far, this is the biggest loss of Navy personnel not related to combat. Things just seem to disappear with no explanation there, so will we ever know what goes on there? I don't think so, and I think we should just stay away.
At our halfway point today, we have an underwater volcano threatening to split the Earth open. light stuff, you know? While generally underwater volcanoes provide hydrogen, sulfide, and other minerals to deep sea life, allowing thriving ecosystems to form at unforgivable depths, one volcano in particular, located just off of the coast of Tonga, seems to be kind of doing the opposite. On January 15th of 2022, big year, the volcano exploded with a force equal to 15 million tons of TNT. The eruption was among the most powerful ever recorded, and it sent water vapor 83 miles up into the stratosphere, causing temporary rises to temperatures in the surrounding area. Not only that, but the eruption reshaped the sea floor. The rim around the volcano had been replaced by a cavern that travels down 850 meters into the Earth's crust. Hopefully it doesn't get any deeper, because if it does, kind of like your ex, we're gonna have some serious issues.
There are some pretty intriguing stories about possible alien bases underwater as well. Take the Solomon Islands, for example. There have been stories for hundreds of years about strange objects hovering above the islands and then descending down into the waters below. Locals on these islands also have stories about terrifying creatures stalking the forests, coming out of intricate cave systems underground. And this is just one example. There are said to be alien bases deep under the Alaska ice. Strange UFO-type objects have been spotted maneuvering through waters across the globe. We have a whole video on it. Top 10 mysterious UFOs discovered underwater. Check it out. So perhaps NASA already knows about alien life that's taken up residency here on Earth. Maybe the deep sea is their domain. I ain't saying this is what I believe. By the way, I'm just throwing some ideas at you.
Next on our list, we have NASA's discovery of a city of lights found in the middle of the ocean, in an area with no land or electricity. In 2012, a map of the Earth at night was published by the Earth Observatory in collaboration with NASA and the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. Everything seemed relatively normal except for one area off the coast of Argentina. You guessed it, a city of lights was shown on the map in a shape that almost resembles an arrowhead, or maybe like the Eiffel Tower. Anyways, it was weird, especially considering the fact that in the area in which the lights are shown, like I said, there's no land. I am repeating myself a lot today. NASA claimed that the lights were a result of fishing boats in the area, but I think it's pretty obvious that NASA is not to be trusted, as they do seem to have a pretty extensive history of secret keeping going on. Plus, the only images ever released of the area were those taken by a satellite at night. I have a feeling something else is going on, but let me know what you think. Do you believe the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, who I have not one, not two, but 3 videos on exposing leaked information they wanted to keep secret? I don't.
So it's not just undiscovered intelligent life forms deep sea divers have to worry about. It's all the primitive creatures as well, some known and some less known. Sure, there are wild stories about humanoid cephalopods attacking researchers down below, or alien bases down there, but while those stories are fun, there is the actual very real possibility of running into something big that could pose a threat to the safety of the crew. Luckily, great whites don't really swim all that deep down, but there's other stuff going on down there. Giant squids are real, and who knows what else could be lurking down there. And the words of Qui-Gon Jinn, there's always a bigger fish. Wise words. You could have giant sea serpents, giant man-eating deep-sea piranhas that can see in the dark. Point is, space is dangerous, sure, but at least you don't have sentient life forms floating around the spacecraft on a constant basis.
And finally, we have the fact that in 2011, 87 World War II explosives made their way out of the ocean and on to Calshot Beach in England, surprising and terrifying locals and tourists alike. Although I'm not sure why you'd want a vacation on the beaches of England. Isn't the whole country's thing being really rainy? Anyways, the many explosive devices were managed by a 5-man bomb squad, which seems a little too relaxed if you ask me. 5 men, 87 bombs. Besides the point, an exclusion zone of 1,000 meters was set up around Calshot Beach to ensure the safety of civilians, while the devices were stacked 300 meters offshore during low tide. When high tide came, they were detonated. The bomb squad continued to comb the beach, the waters, the shores, and a little bit deeper, but luckily, I think no more were found. I think because if they weren't found and they're still there, that's pretty dangerous. If you think that's bad, allow me to remind you that to date, the United States alone has reported, keyword reported, 6 missing nuclear bombs that were lost to the ocean. NASA knows this. I mean, it's public information, so obviously, but I'm betting they probably know the real number too. So I guess it makes sense that they are doing their best to avoid the ocean and to get the heck off this planet as a whole. I mean, if you're gonna die by radiation, might as well do it with a good view of the cosmos, right?
Finally though, what about all the mysterious threats in the deep sea? Things that we just can't quite explain. All the triangles referring to strange sections of water where odd stuff seems to happen all the time. The Bermuda Triangle is of course the most well known, but there are others like the Lake Michigan Triangle, for example. Not that NASA would be exploring Lake Michigan. Places where disappearances seem to happen. Planes will disappear while flying overhead. Ships seem to have accidents or just vanish altogether. Some blame it on treacherous weather. Others think there could be some kind of strange electromagnetic interference in these areas that messes with equipment. These are just theories, of course, but there are so many mysterious incidents in the Bermuda Triangle alone. The disappearance of Flight 19 in 1945, the disappearances of the USS Cyclops in 1918. In 1948, Flight DC-3 went missing, never to be seen again. The Witchcraft vessel in 1967, the list goes on and on. The ocean is vast, mysterious, and dangerous. Most of it is still unexplored, yes, and it's not hard to see why. Underwater caves. Lots of divers have died exploring them. They're labyrinths beneath the surface of the ocean, and sure, they're exciting places to explore. They can be beautiful, but they're also packed with dangers. First off, navigating through an underwater cave is like trying to find your way through a pitch black maze. There are tunnels and chambers crisscrossing in all directions, and if you're not careful, it's easy to get lost. Imagine swimming deeper and deeper into the darkness with no idea which way is up or down. Then you have the risk of getting trapped. Some caves have narrow passages that can squeeze you in, and if you're not careful, you could find yourself wedged with no way out. Another danger of the deep sea are blue holes. These are basically underwater sinkholes, and they can be deceivingly beautiful because they're also incredibly dangerous. Giant gaping chasms in the ocean floor plunging down into the depths. You can see them from the sky. They're often darker blue in color, contrasting with the surrounding water, and they're dark because of how deep they are, for one, and sunlight can't reach the bottom. These holes vary in size and depth. Some extend several hundred feet below the ocean surface. The scariest thing about blue holes is that a lot of them are uncharted territory. Unlike on land, where we have maps and signs to help guide us, most blue holes are unexplored. You never know what you might encounter down there. Who knows what could be living in these areas, for one, but aside from that, there could be dangerous currents, and things do live in some of these blue holes. The Great Blue Hole off the coast of Belize, for example, has been explored, and there are tons of different shark species living down there. So these aren't places you can just go for a casual dive. Deep beneath the ocean's surface, there are these eerie chimneys called black smokers. These are hydrothermal vents on the ocean floor that emit superheated water, which is rich in minerals. But the extreme temperatures and the toxic chemicals can make these areas incredibly dangerous. They're a bit like underwater volcanoes, but instead of spewing lava, they belch out super hot water loaded with minerals. They're found near the edges of tectonic plates, where the Earth's crust is pulling apart, and when cold seawater seeps down into the cracks and meets hot magma below, it gets heated up and then shoots back out of the seafloor in these towering columns of scalding water. The water coming out can be hotter than boiling. We're talking temperatures that would cook you alive. And if that's not scary enough, they're also chock full of toxic chemicals like hydrogen sulfide, which can knock you out cold with just one whiff. Not that you'd really be swimming around down there anyway, to be fair, but still. So the conditions in these areas are pretty extreme, but there is actually life that can survive around black smokers, like tube worms, shrimp. There's a whole ecosystem down there that's that's adapted to thrive in one of the most inhospitable environments on Earth, which is pretty cool. Drowning is said to be one of the worst ways to go, and one easy way to drown, just get caught in a giant swirling vortex of water, a whirlpool. These are kind of like the black holes of the ocean, less mysterious of course, but incredibly deadly, and unlike black holes, which are way too far away from us to cause any harm, even for astronauts, whirlpools are everywhere. One of the most infamous whirlpools is called the Moskstraumen off the coast of Norway. Hope I'm pronouncing that right. Probably not. Its currents are strong enough though to suck down ships which can be torn apart like paper. Whirlpools can be massive, stretching for miles across, so if you happen to stumble on one while sailing or swimming, Eesh. That's all I'm gonna say is just eesh. And whirlpools can be unpredictable. They can form out of nowhere with no warning signs to let you know they're coming. So even if you're the most experienced sailor or swimmer, at the end of the day, we're all still at the mercy of Mother Nature. For all the terrifying creatures that are known to exist, there are also the mysterious ones, creatures that science hasn't documented, but people have claimed to see, and as intriguing as that is, it's just another one of the many reasons the deep sea is such a dangerous place. There are tons of creatures we could talk about. Let's take a creature that doesn't get talked about a whole lot though, a creature that's been dubbed the Moa Moa. The first documented sighting of the Moa Moa was on June 8th of 1890 on Great Sandy Island in Western Australia by a school teacher named Selina Lovell and a small group of her students. The creature was reported to be this huge monster turtle fish thing measuring about 30 feet in length. The creature was described as having a domed shaped body, almost like a turtle shell, about 8 feet across by 5 feet high, with an elongated neck and a 12-foot long tail. The creature's rounded jaws measured what looked to be about 18 inches. The head and tail almost looked like they belonged to two different animals. Lovell didn't get a good glimpse of the creature's feet, but locals have described the Moa Moa having almost alligator-like feet. Lovell watched the creature for half an hour from only about 5 feet away. Afterward, the Moa Moa turned towards the sea, lifting its body and tail above the water, tossing fish into the air, and then swam back down into the deeper water. And finally, I just gotta mention ghosts. Now, I know that sounds a bit silly. Most astronauts and scientists aren't really all that concerned about ghosts, but I mean, just think of all the ships that have sank or gone missing entirely, all the planes that have gone down and sank to the bottom of the water never to be seen again, all the battles that have taken place out at sea. Unlike the black void of space surrounding us here on Earth, our planet's waters are full of life, but also full of death. There are so many immediate dangers, so much unexplored territory. It's no wonder there are so many tales of ghost ships sailing aimlessly across the sea, or tortured spirits rising from the water to drag unsuspecting sailors into the depths. There could be tons of life out there in space and plenty of dangers we can't even fathom. But until we're able to venture out far enough, it seems like taking a trip to the moon may be a safer one than venturing down into the deepest, darkest depths of our very own planet.
And brine pools aren't exclusive to the Red Sea either. The Jacuzzi of Despair is another that scientists have discovered, and this one resides in the Gulf of Mexico. It has a circumference of about 100 feet and it reaches a depth of about 12 feet. Like other brine pools, its water is so dense it refuses to mix with its surroundings, and if you enter it, you will most likely die. Next up, we've got the radioactive waters of the Irish Sea, English Channel, and the Arctic Ocean, as well as the Kara Sea and the Barents Sea. You see, for years, radioactive waste has been improperly disposed of into some of the world's largest bodies of water. A British nuclear fuels plant is responsible for raising the radiation levels of the Irish Sea after repeatedly releasing radioactive waste into its waters. Similarly, a French nuclear reprocessing plant released copious amounts of waste into the English Channel. And if you think that's bad, for decades it has been reported that Russia has been dumping large quantities of radioactive material materials into the Arctic Ocean as well as the Kara and Barents Sea. All of this has caused an increase in the radioactivity of not only seawater, but sea life as well. I really don't blame NASA for wanting to keep their lead scientists out of waters contaminated with radioactive materials known to cause fatigue, hair loss, memory loss, concentration problems, nausea, vomiting, headaches, blurry vision, and of course cancer. Next up, we have the fact that our oceans are absolutely littered with dead bodies. In the United States alone, approximately 4,400 unidentified bodies are found in the ocean each year, and globally that number is around 260,000. And these are just the ones that we found that we were unable to identify, meaning that the actual number of bodies floating around or slowly decomposing beneath the surface of the oceans is way more than that, which is both terrifying and disgusting, and also a good reason for anyone to decide not to step foot in the ocean. Personally, there is no way I would give up snorkeling just because of a few bodies floating around in the deep ocean, but if I actually saw one wash up on the shore, I might be inclined to change my mind, so I don't blame you, NASA. Next, we've got those unidentified sounds of the ocean, specifically the Julia and the bloop. The Julia was a noise recorded on March 1st of 1999 by the United States National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, and it sounds like this. Scientists have speculated that the sound was a result of an iceberg either breaking or smashing into another. The true origin of the Julia does remain unknown. And then of course there's also the bloop, another strange sound recorded in the ocean, this time in 1997, and the bloop sounds like this. Like the Julia, scientists believe that the bloop is the sound of an iceberg, probably breaking in half, which is probable, but it's still just speculation, and considering the fact that there have been numerous other sounds recorded by scientists that have been unable to be attributed to anything, let alone icebergs, who's to say the bloop and the Julia aren't the sounds of two giant underwater monsters communicating with one another or asserting dominance to an aquatic challenger? Next up, we've got the possibility that NASA decided to step away from exploring the ocean once they realized our planet was irreversibly doomed. I mean, maybe they have bigger fish to fry than figuring out what kind of big fish reside at the bottom of the ocean. It is possible that they are actively working towards ensuring the future of humanity as we know it, whether that future takes place on Earth or on a distant planet in a faraway galaxy. For all we know, the race to find the next inhabitable planet could already be well underway, and if it is, I guarantee NASA and the United States are working overtime to be the first. We all know how they like to get their flag in there first. And maybe they're doing this because of the fact that there are comets set to collide with the Earth in the next 2,000 years, or perhaps it's the fact that scientists are very well aware that eventually our home galaxy of the Milky Way will be getting swallowed up by our neighboring galaxy, the Andromeda. I don't know, I guess maybe they're looking at the big picture, pulling an Elon Musk, if you will. And then of course there is the theory that NASA is still very much exploring our oceans, but are doing their absolute best to keep things happening under the water, under the radar of the public. As I mentioned in part 1 of this video, many people believe that NASA has made many more discoveries than they have actually shared with us. Underwater cities and societies, gigantic megafauna, and even alien life forms are all possible reasons they might want to keep their findings a secret from the general public. That is, until they figure out their next steps. Speculations surrounding underwater facilities used to study unknown phenomena and massive underwater cages housing the world's largest sea creature, aka the Megalodon, have been circulating the internet for ages. It's possible that an Aquatic Area 51 studying unidentified aquatic phenomena exists, and that one day the Pentagon will declassify those documents the way they declassify documents pertaining to peculiar happenings in our atmosphere such as UAPs and UFOs. Only time will tell.
In 1946, something strange happened over Scandinavia. Reports started flooding in from Sweden, Finland, and Norway about bright, mysterious objects in the sky. Sometimes during the day, and sometimes at night. One report even mentioned a rocket-like object crashing into a lake, but nothing was ever recovered. These sightings became so widespread that the phenomenon was dubbed the Swedish ghost rockets. Some think the objects were Soviet missiles, leftovers from German V-2 rockets. In fact, by 1946, the Soviets had begun their own missile program, testing missiles in the exact region where the ghost rockets were reported. The timing fit perfectly, and for a while, a lot of people believed these rockets were Soviet-made weapons being tested in secret. But it turns out that the Soviets hadn't actually launched any V-2 missiles in 1946. After the war, the Germans' V-2 factories were mostly scavenged by the Allies, and the Soviets were behind in missile development, so while it made sense at the time, we're just not sure if that theory holds up today. As the reports continued to come in though back in the day, the press began calling the objects flying bombs. Some even speculated they were alien spacecraft. Eventually, scientists came out saying there was no solid evidence that any missiles had been launched and said that some of these supposed rockets were probably just shooting stars. But if that were the case, I mean, why was it only happening then? What, I mean, people had never seen a shooting star before? It just seems like a weak explanation to me. Till this day, we still don't know for sure what happened over the Baltic Sea that year. The Michigan Triangle, which makes up this area of the water that you see here, is almost just as strange as the notorious Bermuda Triangle. Over the years, ships, planes, and the people on them have vanished, and many of these cases are still unsolved. One of the earliest incidents dates back to 1679, when the French sailing ship Le Griffon disappeared without a trace after leaving Green Bay. No wreckage has ever been found for that one. Then there's the bizarre case of the Roosevelt, a schooner that capsized twice with no sign of its crew. In 1921, the ship was found overturned, the crew missing. Even more strange, the captain had a premonition before setting sail and had refused to board that day, which ended up saving his life. On April 28, 1937, Captain George R. Donner was in command of a ship traveling from Erie, Pennsylvania to Port Washington, Wisconsin. One night, Donner went back to his cabin after a long shift. His second mate was supposed to wake him once they were at their destination, but when the mate went to check on him a few hours later, Donner was gone, and they searched every inch of that ship, but he was never seen again. The most infamous case was on June 23rd of 1950 though. A flight piloted by Robert C. Lind was en route from New York to Minneapolis when it hit bad weather near Chicago. The plane changed course and headed over Lake Michigan. Around midnight, Lind requested to drop the altitude, but his request was denied. And that was the last communication anyone heard from Flight 2501. It vanished, and its last known position was within the Michigan Triangle. In 2006, a ghost ship was spotted drifting off the coast of Queensland, Australia. The vessel, identified as the Jian Seng, didn't show any signs of a struggle. There was a broken tow rope, but that was about it. A patrol vessel was sent in to investigate, and when they boarded this empty ship, they found it eerily quiet. There were no signs that any violent struggle had happened or anything like that. It was just an empty ship floating along, and it looked like it had been floating for a while because it was completely out of fuel. Stranger though, the origin of the ship has never been found. Nobody knows where it came from or where it was going. It hadn't been registered, and no search had ever been made for it. There was a large amount of rice on the ship though, which has led some to believe that this was a resupply vessel for fishing boats. The Devil's Sea, also known as the Dragon's Triangle, is like the Pacific Ocean's version of the Bermuda Triangle. Located off the coast of Japan, the area has become rather infamous for strange magnetic anomalies, unexplained lights, and of course, unsolved disappearances. Japanese fishing authorities even consider it a dangerous spot. One of the most chilling stories happened in 1952, when Japan sent out a research vessel to investigate the Devil's Sea. The ship and its 31-person crew disappeared without a trace. As for what's really behind it all, you have your standard theories. Aliens, portals to parallel universes. Some scientists think volcanic activity in the region could explain the disappearances, but whatever the cause, it seems like this area gets its name for a very good reason. Flight 19 was a US Navy training flight that disappeared over the Bermuda Triangle on December 5th of 1945. The flight involved 5 TBM Avenger bombers led by Lieutenant Charles C. Taylor, along with 14 crew. They were on a routine training exercise. No one was expecting anything to go wrong, but it did. It began when Lieutenant Taylor's compasses started malfunctioning. After completing their tasks, Taylor and his crew got lost. Radio transmissions showed that Taylor thought he was over the Florida Keys, but his compass was giving false readings. At one point he said, "I am over land, but it's broken. I'm sure I'm in the Keys, but I don't know how far down, and I don't know how to get to Fort Lauderdale." As the confusion continued to grow, other pilots in the group said, "Well, why don't we fly west and head back to Florida?" But Taylor insisted on continuing in the wrong direction. By the time they realized something was seriously wrong, they were far out over the Atlantic, with their fuel running low. Taylor radioed, "We are heading 030 degrees for 45 minutes, then we will fly north to make sure we are not over the Gulf of Mexico." But the weather was getting bad, and radio contact started cutting out. Taylor's last message, "All planes close up tight, we'll have to ditch unless landfall," was heard just before they vanished. While all this was happening, another aircraft was sent to search for Flight 19, but it also disappeared. Until this day, there's never been any trace of the missing planes or the crew. With all that said, I've been your host, James, and I'll catch you, yes you specifically, in the next video.